And to round the evening off, we will then hear from Jane Vincent. She has planned and delivered many canoe projects with Yukon First Nations in schools. With Golden Horn Elementary School, she leads the annual Grade 7 Yukon River canoe trip from Minto to Dawson City. In this webinar, Jane will highlight some of the strategies and lessons learned over the 9 years that this trip has been completed using a progression of 5 days of training followed by the 315-kilometer 5-day river trip.
All right. That's so great to be here. Great to hear what's happening in NWT. So close. You know, we're neighbors. We're territorial neighbors, and yet in so many ways we don't know what's going on over there. So that was great. So thanks for the intro, Al. I'm coming at you tonight from Du Chu in Champagne-Asiac, traditional territory. My home is about 75 kilometers west of Whitehorse. Champagne-Asiac First Nations have paddled and walked this land for millennia, and I'd love to honor them by sharing with you this incredible dugout. So in 2019, the First Nation initiated a project. They brought an enormous yellow cedar log, as well as a master carver from Haines, Alaska, and citizens took that yellow cedar log and created this incredible craft. Last year, I did a little rescue training with them before they took it on an ocean journey from Haines, Alaska, all the way to Juneau. My home river is the Takini River, a wonderful, clear flowing waterway shown here with some paddlers, some grade 10 paddlers. The mountain overlooking the river is Gadal, a name from the Southern Shoshone language. And the Takini flows into the Yukon River just north of Whitehorse, and you'll see that confluence later in the presentation. The orange line here shows you the Alaska Highway, which shoots like a straight arrow through the land, whereas the green line shows the Takini River, in whose valley the highway was built. So the bends, the cut banks, the islands, and the sloughs along the river offer the canoeist a chance to see the land with new eyes. So the pictures that you see around this slide are some youth from Champagne-Asiac First Nation. We spent 3 days on this stretch of river, had a wonderful time. So here in the Yukon, rivers are home. And I prioritize work that supports people to travel their home places by canoe. So today I'm going to talk with you about the Golden Horn Elementary School Yukon River trip, which includes 6 days of Whitehorse-based training, followed by that 5-day trip. This year, will be our 10th trip. So that represents about 170 students that have experienced this trip. And we have all learned a lot, students and leaders alike. So I myself consider myself to be like a freelance canoe instructor. So for this project, I work for the Department of Education and I'm paid a daily rate. And I'd like to introduce you to my dear friend, Michelle Beaulieu. So she is the rock star teacher that makes all of this happen. She's the overall trip lead, and I myself am the canoe instructor and the on the water lead. This picture, for your information, was taken at midnight on our first camp of the trip last year. Now, certainly this trip involves the whole school community. The principal has to juggle lots of logistics to free up the teachers. The school council has done fundraising and purchased lots of gear. Volunteer parents bake and so on. However, today I am going to focus on canoe skills preparation and the group management on the water. So first here comes a video. This is welcome to the Yukon River. This location is 60 kilometers upriver from Dawson City. And so at this moment, we're on the final day of our trip. And I'm showing this to give you a visual of kind of what we need to bring the students, what skills the students need to have in order to complete this trip. So we had rain the entire day previous to this video being made, so you can see some debris floating in the river. And often I choose break spots on islands, which are easier to land on. But due to the rain and the group at this point having solid paddle skills, I chose to land them here at basically a high bank creek confluence site. Now, I want to explain one of our strategies is that we always land and leave shore with an upstream ferry angle. And our boats are instructed when they're on the water to stay in that upstream ferry angle. And they're just going to ferry back and forth until our whole group is on the water. And that way, once everybody's on the water, we pivot together and we are all together. Because as you can see, this river is a big conveyor belt. And if we just let the first boat head on downstream, we'd be 2 kilometers apart by the time everybody was on the water. This group here, I believe last year we had 19 canoes. That was a huge group. And this year, classes keep getting bigger. So we're doing something new. We're going to have two groups of 12 canoes that are going to travel and camp independently. And as you can see, the gorgeous fresh green, this trip takes place in May. And so the leaves have just come out. It's a gorgeous time of year to be on the water. And incidentally, the ice went out in Dawson City today. So now, having shown you that video, I'm basically just going to start at the beginning with the planning for this river trip. So the Yukon Department of Education has a process for complex trips, which include anything on water or that are overnight. So the teacher completes a risk analysis addressing hazards and mitigations. Big old question, what could go wrong? Another way I like to frame risk analysis, being on the land in a good way. So the school principal signs off on the forms, and then they're reviewed by a committee of outdoor leadership professionals who recommend to the superintendent, and that is who ultimately approves the trip. Then there's a parent meeting at which information from that risk assessment is shared. This trip is for every single grade 7 student. So for some, canoeing and camping is brand new. Others may have grown up in paddling families. Some parents become part of our leadership team, and they must attend every training session as well as the trip, which is a commitment of 12 days. We've had some fabulous parent leaders over the years. In terms of cost, each family is asked to pay $100, and that covers the food. But the majority of all the project expenses are covered between the school and the Department of Education. Mission statement. Our training prepares us for a successful trip. We develop technical skills, communication strategies, and leadership at every level, student, parent, teachers, and school, so we may manage unforeseen events on the journey. When some extraordinarily high winds slammed us and created whitecaps on the river, we went from buddy rafts to 4-boat rafts to one enormous raft holding onto some willows on an island. And from there, when the wind diminished a bit, we were able to land. Basically, number one is keeping the group together. And as you saw from that little video, there's a lot of current. And so we need to be very intentional and regimented about our strategies that allow us to keep the group together. Because when you get slammed with something like this, you don't want half your group half a kilometer away, right? So that basically informs all of our training. So the training progression is 6 full days of training and a dry land day, a lake day, A full day on the river, followed by an overnight on the river, and then some ferry practice. So I'll just give you a little bit of visuals on that. Just last year, I added a dryland canoe session, and I love that. It makes our first day on the lake so much smoother. So I'll spend 2 hours with the class. We'll talk about throw bags. We'll actually do throw bags. We do forwards and draws in a circle from a standing position. For the stern correction strokes, I literally get in the canoe to demonstrate those because those are more, they're not as conducive to teaching in a standing position, I find. So then the kids can actually jump in the boat, one on each seat, both facing the middle, practice their stern correction strokes. We also show them how to koala onto the end of a boat in the event of a capsize, how to get back into a two-boat raft. So that school session is a real keeper. I really recommend that. So then our first lake session involves everybody getting wet, which, considering the ice has only gone out a day or two before we do this, it's very cold. But the cool thing is that this trip is part of the school culture. As I said, it's been going for 10 years. So the kids, if they've gone to this school ever since kindergarten, they have watched the grade 7 class depart for this trip ever since they were 5 years old. So, or they may have older siblings that have done this trip. So they all, or many of them, know about this cold water plunge they're going to do on the first day. And it's like a rite of passage. So the first full day on the river, welcome to current. They are now getting introduced to this force. It's a predictable force, and we use all kinds of creative strategies to try to really teach that concept of, if you feel wobbly, why do you feel wobbly? And that difference between an upstream tilt and a downstream tilt, which will feel solid. So this photo actually shows you the confluence of the Takini River, which I showed in some earlier slides. That bluff there is where it meets the Yukon. So buddy boats. I really feel these are a huge key to the success of this program. A buddy boat system means we need an adult to student ratio of 1 adult for every 3 kids. The goal or the requirement is that you can buddy up with your buddy boat in 10 seconds. Okay. This is wonderful as a leader because it instantly compresses your group from 12 boats to 6 boats. So when some winds start coming, or so many reasons, it's wonderful to have kind of less separate units on the water. And it means that no kid boat is unsupported. And how it works is that one paddler in the stern holds while the other paddles, vice versa in the bow. And those other 2 people that aren't holding, they are paddling. And this is pretty close to as fast as paddling just a single canoe. So it's not a raft, you're still moving. So it's great for teaching. It's great for giving tired or discouraged students a break. So buddy boats are something that we're practicing on each of our training days, as well, of course, the loading of the boats. So our next training day is, we added at some point in our progression, we added an overnight training trip. This lets them build the expedition skills that they need. You can see now they've got gear loaded into their boats. It's not the full 5 days of gear, but they've learned a tether system for tying it in. They've learned a few knots. And here we are practicing buddy boats. Okay, so the concept is that you know where your buddy boat is, and you pull out onto the river together, and you stay in your upstream ferry, and you find your buddy boat. This takes so much practice. So it's wonderful that we have a lot of time training to figure this out, because and we get plenty of experienced paddler parents on these trips, but we all need to actually really do this before it really cements as a strategy. If your buddy boat is 50 meters to the other side of the river, you don't yell at them to come to you, you go over to them. You're like a little sheepdog that goes and gets your sheep and brings them back to you. And sometimes you might literally say, okay, buddy up. That means what I just described, they're holding. And we'll get back over onto the side of the river where we need to be, kind of thing. So as a leader, this takes off so much pressure, and it's just a real divide and conquer kind of technique. And those buddy rafts, the next step is to bring them together again. So now it's a 4-boat raft. And with the 4-boat rafts and the bigger rafts, the outside boats are the captains. Like, they are the ones that are staying alert, paying attention to where we're going, and controlling the angle. And the people in the middle are able to take a break. And I have a certain paddle signal for rafting up. It's just doing this with my paddle. So kids pretty much love that one. All right, and so we do have a loaded boat capsize drill that we do on that first day, and I'll play that for you, even though it's nothing too spectacular. But the thing is, we are learning. We're doing a capsize, and what we're really emphasizing in this drill, though, is the group management. And so we are requiring these kids, as soon as something happens, again, that's where buddy boats is amazing, because it's like instantly you buddy up. You don't even, because your adult boater is right beside you anyway, and it's like, okay, we're going to buddy up. And then maybe then they need to be quiet to listen for instructions again, because as you saw, if during a capsize some people end up on the opposite side of the river, we lose track of our group. So that's something we are training for every session that we're on the water, is that we need to figure out what we need to do to stay together. And so that's that. And I guess our final session, this is right in downtown Whitehorse. Kids are practicing pivots. I need them to be able to pivot so they can ferry to where they need to go, or so that they can reconnect with their buddy boat. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. That's one of my frequently spoken teaching points. That kid just did a nice job of that. And appropriately, there's the SS Klondike. And so that boat used to steam up and down the very stretch of river that we are going to go and paddle. There's a lot of kids out there. This is what 18 boats looks like. And I love to see them jostling close together. I mean, they learn, anything that makes you wobble, just keep paddling, keep pressure on your paddle. And that's it. That kind of ferry tune-up on day 6 of our training. That's the last of the training. And then we have departure. So here's Michelle. Oh my goodness, who knew I was gonna get emotional here? But yeah, she's pretty amazing. She is very happy in this picture because she's got every single student on the bus. And I guess if you guys know anything about school trips, you understand why I just respect her so much. So I think like this is the entire cohort of grade 7, and there were some students that morning that were just so anxious, and then they didn't want to come. So here we are getting ready to drive to our put-in with every single student. And this is what the put-in looks like. It's about a 260 kilometer drive from Whitehorse. So by the time we get on the water, it's mid-afternoon. And the water there, the current is a little stronger. So the kids are definitely feeling a little apprehension, but by now our systems are so ingrained. How we get in the boat with the whole canoe floating. Stern person gets in first, bow person holds. We leave in a ferry angle. We find our buddy boat. Like these systems, that's why we ingrain them, because when the current is stronger at our put-in, they work for us. Oh, a short little video about coming in for a break, because this is a moment where things can get chaotic. And one of the things I'm going to emphasize more is going to be a 2-meter rule, so that I don't get boats spread up 100 or 200 meters of beach. Well, now I'll talk to you about the magic formula. And oops, I'm okay. Um, amazingly, because like I say, I've done this for 10 years. You can count on making 10 kilometers an hour as long as your boat is on the water. So that is why we do a lot of rafting. We do a lot of eating in rafts. We take breaks, but as much as possible, we take the breaks on the water because as long as we are on the water, we can make 10 kilometers an hour. So then that informs the planning. The first day, we always camp in the same place. It's 35K. So with a half-hour shore break, we're going to get there depending on when we leave, but usually it's around 7 or 8 p.m. And then it just goes from there. We know how many hours we have to put on the water. If we get a later start, we're going to have a later arrival. There's some flexibility in there for sure. And then on the last day, we're going to arrive in Dawson at 5. So that's a bit of a shorter day on the water. But the kids, they can have a lot of fun. They can socialize, they can eat, they can rest all while in rafts on the water. And then, of course, they do need to have breaks to stretch legs and have bathroom breaks. That's what 19 canoes put to bed for the night at Hucha Hudan, also known as Fort Selkirk, looks like. So taking care of our equipment, big part of the whole operation. When we land, kids are washing out boats. Boats are always carried up to high camp, or if it's an island, they're carried inland and tied together. Um, life jackets secured, paddles all gathered up. So just learning to love our gear. And you'll notice Yukon written on all these boats. So the Yukon Department of Education has 60, 70 canoes. They have trailers. They hire, we call it a wrangler, to deliver the canoes to the different places that the school groups wish to use them. So it is pretty fantastic. And many of them are over 30 years old. These old town discoveries that have been on trips since the 80s. And Jem Boyd, who's in the audience, took many, many students out in these same canoes. So here's the buddy boat system, kind of another depiction of it. So every morning it's called the card game, and every student and every adult's name is on a card, and we just put them together into the groups for the day. So we're going to be thinking like, okay, we want to put kids together that are going to enjoy being together. We want to, put a parent with their kid only once. We want to switch it around, but there's certain kids that are also quite nervous and have asked if they could always be with an adult. So we're juggling all these things and making up the groups for the day. That's quite a fun process, especially at the end where kids might be like, "Oh, do you think I could paddle with Caleb today?" And little things going on. But it's, as I said, the buddy boat system is what makes this all work. So for Selkirk, best way to put your boat on the water is to load it up high and carry it down, because that steep rocky shoreline gets a little chaotic if you're trying to stage the gear there. And it's a nice opportunity to work on our teamwork. And as you saw in the training, a lot of the days were pretty cold, right? When we start off, we could be in toques and mitts and many layers. But sometimes when we get out on the trip, we are into summer. I mean, kids are still wearing a fair bit of layers here, but this is a pretty great moment when you have all these boats lined up, all that packing, all tied in the way you want it. And I just love it when we get on the water and the kids say, "Wow, this just feels like we're training." And "Wow, I can't believe we're on the trip." So it's a pretty cool thing to offer these 12 and 13-year-olds. Well, as a river lead for this kind of a trip, this is what I am mindful of: chaos. I hate chaos, so I'm always trying to create systems that are diminishing chaos. And as I mentioned before, keeping the group together is a huge part of that. Energy challenges. I recognize this in myself, the other leaders, as well as, of course, the students. As soon as we feel too hot, too cold, tired, frustrated, hungry, dehydrated, all these things, right? It diminishes your energy, it diminishes your ability to make a good decision and your enjoyment. So we try to have systems for all those things. So many little details that we have learned over the years. I'll just give you a few examples. So if a student needs to change a layer, it's starting to rain and oh, we got to put our rain gear on. You need to come into a raft. You need to make sure that if one person at a time is going to change that layer, people beside you are holding the boats together, then you can remove your PFD and put the coat on, put the PFD back on. So we take the time so that this is done in a good way with solid rafts, one person at a time. Um, Missing a channel. Okay, this is a great example of why buddy boats are amazing. It should, it can still happen. I mean, we teach and hope that well, I wouldn't say it can still happen, but as long as this buddy boat system is strong, you're not going to have a kid boat going by themselves down a different channel. I definitely run a tight ship when it comes to I want to be in the lead. So if somebody's ahead of me, they need to do a pivot and ferry. And then that conveyor belt of the river will bring the other boats back to them. Chaotic shore breaks. Yes, now I'm into doing 2 meter rule. So that means you land within 2 meters of the boat beside you. And if there's a big gap, you have to walk your boat down to gather the group up. That way we can gather everybody and explain what's going on. An uneven number, that's one to consider. Trying to bring a boat with a third seat, because you really don't know till the morning of the trip if it's going to be even or uneven. Um, and then, of course, the other option is a solo, and that's why it's nice to have good adult capacity, because a solo kind of takes, to a certain extent, it might take an adult out of the support buddy boat equation. Of course, capsize is something we planned for, and as mentioned, it's group management. You need to buddy, raft, stand by, listen, quiet for instructions, and so on. There's so many other details that I haven't listed, but overall, it's a beautiful and ongoing experiential journey on the part of myself as a leader and of the students. So this year's program actually starts tomorrow. We're going to have the dryland session at Golden Horn tomorrow. So thanks for listening. That's well, I mean, I don't have slides of us arriving in Dawson City, but as you can imagine, that is a pretty triumphant moment. We often have the shoreline just thick with parents that have come up to behold the moment, cheering. And then we love to do multiple paddle salutes. Basically, we're saluting our people on shore, ourselves, and the river. And just like, yeah, we feel so much gratitude for completing such a special journey using new skills as a floating community.